Hello everyone, it's me Mr. Garlett. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be reading another story, and this one is quite an interesting character. His name is King Midas. There was once a king called Midas who was almost as stupid as he was greedy. When there was a music competition between the two gods Pan and Apollo, Midas was asked to be judge. Now Pan was Midas's friend, so instead of listening to the music to judge who was best, he decided to let Pan win even before they began to play. Comparing Apollo's music with Pan's is like comparing a golden trumpet with a tin whistle, but Midas had already made up his mind. Pan was the better. Oh, definitely. No doubt about it. Pan was the better, he said. On he went, praising Pan, until Apollo turned quite scarlet with rage and pointed a magic finger at King Midas. There is something wrong with your ears if you think Pan's music is better than mine. Nothing's wrong with my ears, said foolish King Midas. Oh no? Well, we can soon change that. When he got home, Midas's ears was itching. He looked in the mirror, and, horror of horrors, his ears were growing. Longer and longer they grew, furrier and furrier, until he had brown and pink donkey's ears. Midas found he could hide the ears if he crammed them both into a tall hat. Nobody must see them. He thought as he walked about with his hat pulled over his ears. All day he wore it. It was a great relief. They only saw that the king wore a tall hat all day long, and hurried to do the same, thinking it was the latest fashion. But there was one person from whom Midas could not hide his secret. When the barber came to cut his hair, the dreadful truth came out. The barber gasped. The barber stared. The barber stuffed a towel into his mouth to keep himself from laughing. You will tell no one. Of course not. Ever. No one. I promise, babbled the barber, and cut the king's hair and helped him back on with his hat. It was to be their secret, never to be told. The barber had given his promise. He never broke his promises. But, oh dear, it was such a hard secret to keep. He ached to tell somebody. He would suddenly burst out laughing in public and could not explain why. He lay awake at nights for fear of talking in his sleep. He kept that secret until he thought it would burn holes in him. But at last he just had to tell it. The barber took a very long walk right away from town, all the way to the river. He dug a hole in the ground and put his head deep down in it. Then he whispered into the hole, King Midas has long ears. After that, he felt a lot better. And the rain rained, and the grass grew, and the reeds by the river grew too. Meanwhile, Midas, wearing his tall cap, of course, was walking in his garden when he met a satyr, half man, half horse. The satyr was lost. Midas gave him breakfast and directed him on his way. I am so grateful, said the satyr. Permit me to reward you. I shall grant you one wish. He could have wished to be rid of his donkey ears, but no. At once, Midas' head filled with pictures of money, wealth, treasure, gold. His eyes glistened. Oh, please, 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 grant that everything I touch turns to gold. Oof, not a good idea, said the satyr. Think again. But Midas insisted. That was his wish. The satyr shrugged and went on his way. Huh! I knew it was too good to be true, said King Midas, and he was so disappointed that he picked up a pebble to throw after the satyr. The stone turned to gold in his palm. My wish! The satyr granted it after all, cried Midas, and he did a little dance on the spot. He ran to a tree and touched it. Sure enough, the twigs and branches turned to gold. He ran back to his palace and stroked every wall, chair, table, and lamp. They all turned to gold. When he brushed against the curtains, even they turned solid with a sudden clang. Prepare me a feast, Midas commanded. Being rich makes me hungry. The servants ran to fetch meat and bread, fruit and wine, while Midas touched each dish and plate, because it pleased him to eat off gold. When the food arrived, he clutched up a wing of chicken and bit into it. Clang! It was hard and cold between his lips. The celery scratched his tongue. The bread broke a tooth. Every bite of food turned to gold as he touched it. The wine rattled in its goblet, solid as an egg in an egg cup. Don't stand there staring. Fetch me something I can eat, Midas told a servant, giving him a push. It was a golden statue of a servant that toppled over and fell with a thud. Just then the queen came in. What's this I hear about a wish? She asked, and went to kiss her husband. Just then the queen... Oh, sorry. Don't come near! Don't touch me! He shrieked, and jumped away from her. But his little son, who was too young to understand, ran and hugged Midas around the knees. Papa! Papa! Silence. His son was silent. The boy's golden arms were still hooped around Midas's knees. His little golden mouth was open, but no sound came out. Midas ran to his bedroom and locked the door, but he could not sleep that night, for the pillow turned to gold under his head. He was so hungry, so thirsty, so lonely, and so afraid. Oh, you gods! Take away this dreadful wish! I never realised. There was a clip-clopping of hoofs, and the satyr put his head through the window. I did try to tell you, he said. Midas fell on his knees on the golden floor. His golden robe clanged and swung on him like a giant bell. His tall cap fell to the ground like a metal cooking pot. Take it back, please, please. Ask the gods to take back my wish, he begged. With ears like that, I think you have troubles enough, said the satyr, laughing loudly. Very well, go and wash in the river, but do remember not to be so silly another time. King Midas ran through the long grass, pushed his way through the long reeds, and leapt into the river. The ripples filled with gold dust, but the water itself did not turn to gold. Not did the river bank as Midas pulled himself out. He was cured. He carried buckets of water back to the palace and threw them over the little golden statue in the dining room. And there stood his son, soaked from head to foot and starting to cry. By this time, the grass had grown tall in the fields, and the reeds by the river were taller still. When the wind blew, they rustled. When the wind blew harder, they murmured. When the wind blew harder, still they whispered. King Midas has long donkey ears. And on some windy days, the reeds sang so loudly that everyone heard them from miles away. Around, King Midas has long donkey ears. And that is how King Midas' secret is known to us all today. Now, that was quite an interesting story about a man who turned everything to gold and being careful about what you wish for. Now, I do hope you enjoyed that one. And again, there is plenty more stories for us to read. So I hope you enjoyed these. I'm really, really liking these stories. There's some really, really interesting ones. Until tomorrow, I hope you stay nice and safe. I hope you have a nice, relaxing evening. And I shall see you tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.